Are you looking for a webtoon with action? Scratch that. Comedy? Well, read Kubera, because that's how it introduces itself at the very least, and in all fairness I'd say it does live up to that. And before I get into my detailed thoughts on it, at least for the first 40 or so chapters, let's play rock, paper, scissors, where if you lose you have to hit the sub button. On shoot. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. If you lost, you know what to do. Hit the sub button while you're down there, maybe consider leaving a like, dropping a comment, and maybe hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date with all the videos I'm putting out, because I'll probably make a follow-up to Kubera when I've read a bit more of it. Because, as I said, I'm only around the 40, 50 chapters in so far, so I'm quite early on. And just to start off, I think so far my favourite arc that I've read is in the titled arcs that are there, is The Past I Yearn For. It was really good, and it does a lot, I think, but we'll get into why that's my favourite arc so far in a little bit. So, Kubera, how does it start? Well, it starts with this girl who has the name of a god, and that is a pretty big deal, for reasons that I have yet to be told, but I'm assuming it's because names hold power here, given that the magic system is all about using a god's name and something else to cast a spell, so I assume it's because names hold power. And it would make sense given that Kubera is physically very, very, very strong. Much stronger than normal people would be, at the very least. And one day, her entire village gets wiped out when the sky turns red. And when I say wiped out, I mean all the people and the village itself get completely wiped off the face of the map. Or at least on the surface, that's what happens. Before this happens, she bumps into a blue-skinned man in the woods when she's out looking for mushrooms, who is an interesting fellow, a very interesting fellow, and you'll get to know him a lot more as you read. And he threatens to kill her multiple times, but lets her go. And then she sees her village get destroyed, heads back, and sees this very feathery-looking fellow who tries to kill her, but then she gets saved by a magician called Asher, and then basically they get away, and yeah, the story continues from there. That's just the introductory premise. If that's enough for you to be interested in going and reading it, go ahead, go read it, and then come back if you haven't read it yet, in case you don't want to spoil yourself for the first 40 or so chapters. But let's talk about my favourite thing with Kubera. The character interactions. I might be peeking the mic, hold on. The character interactions in Kubera are easily my favourite thing within the story. Well, were my favourite thing. I do have a new favourite thing, but that's more recent. But God, I'm already butchering this video. One of my favourite things, probably my second favourite thing, let's go with that, is the character interactions. They are absolutely amazing. I love how, like, full of life the way the characters talk to each other, even if the characters themselves are trying to be, flat and blunt. There's so much like life and just the way the characters interact, not just the main cast, but all of them. The way they interact feels so full of life and like real. It's incredible. And later on you're introduced, I say later on, a bit later on, because I know the webtoon is very long. It's been going for a very long time. So me saying later on isn't really much, but later on comparatively to where I've read, you're introduced to a god, another one. Well, not another one. The first one you're introduced to, in Agni, who has been summoned to this world, which is something that shouldn't really be possible, but is, because it happened. And he's a really interesting character. Like, he's probably one of my favorites so far. Just, oh my god, he's so good. But it's actually not our protagonists, heroes, if you will, that are my favorite within this story, but we'll get onto that. You can probably figure out where I'm going with this based on just me saying that. And you're also introduced to another character who's called Brilith Ruin, who is a priestess at this city, and basically whose sole purpose is to protect the city. She creates what's called a closed space, protecting the city from attacks from the monsters, whose names I've forgotten. Sura, there we are. Sura, there we are, that's what it is. Because this world has magic, as I briefly skimmed over. Magic that is drawn from the gods. However, in ancient times, it was also drawn from Sura, who are basically just, I don't want to say monsters, some of them are, but at higher levels, they're less monstrous and can become humanoid in nature, so it's a bit more complicated than just calling them monsters. But yeah, Sura, however, after a great event, gods and Sura left the human realm into their own realms. The gods realm devoid of basically everything. The human realm being beautiful and pristine and full of life, where humans can live peacefully for the most part, with only a few low-level Sura existing within the human realm. And then the Sura realm, which is a complete hellhole. It's just horrible. It's toxic in nature, which is very problematic for one particular race of Sura, the Gandhava race or clan, which our blue-skinned fellow from earlier, Gandhava, is the king of. He is an Astika, and the origin, an original, one that doesn't have parents. He just spawned into reality, I assume. And he is the king of this race. There are many others, and they're all based off of Hindu mythology, as are the gods, which I find very interesting because I haven't really seen any like Hindu mythos referenced in anything other than like Shin Megami Tensei, and very lightly within the Somnium Files. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Kubera. But I did briefly hint at it earlier with, in fact, I'm rambling a little bit, but I want to go back to talking about Brilith, because I did mention her and then immediately move on from it after telling you what her job is, and then transition into some world building, and then kind of... I'm all over the place with this video, but look, it's what happens. I don't script this shit. But, Brilith Ruin. Yeah, she's my waifu of Kubera. Like, without question. I love the way she acts. She's great. She's also fucking gorgeous, that too. But she's just a really cool character. I love how she interacts with the people around her, how she's kind of distant with the people around her. She still has close friends, but there's a certain like wall between her and other people. And then you see how she interacts with Agni, the god she summoned, and it's just really, really wholesome. It's really nice. You see her... She's very human, is what I'm trying to get at. She's a really human character, and I love that. Some of my favorite characters just ever are very similar, where they have very human flaws, they do very dumb things, they make very human mistakes, and I love that. I love how Brilith is written. So far, she's been great, and I've heard that she's around for a good while, and she's one of the best characters in the webtoon, so I'm very happy to hear that. But now onto my favorite thing right now, and it is primarily because of the past I yearn for, and that is the villains of Kubera. They don't feel evil. You can't hate any of the villains, at least so far, with, I'd argue, one exception who you could potentially hate, because as of their introduction, they do seem quite malicious, and I'm also very, very for that, because having a proper villain, or a more malicious villain, at least for now, is very contrast to the villains we do have with Gandhava and Maruna, not Maruda, Maruna. He is of the Garuda clan. He is actually the son of Garuda, the former king of the Garuda clan. That's not the point. And it's just that all the villains we've been introduced to so far, and whenever we see a character do something cruel or evil, it's very heavily implied they have very important reasons for doing it. It's not because they're evil and sick and twisted and want to watch the world burn and want to cause people to suffer because they don't like them or whatever. They're doing it because they have reasons to. Like Gandhava, he is so devoted to finding out if his daughter's alive. It's the only thing keeping him going and stopping him from returning to this cold-hearted monster that he used to be. And you can't feel bad for him. You can't hate him. Well, you can feel bad for him. You can't hate the actions he does because you know what he's fighting for. You know why he's doing this. And when you see things not quite work out with another character who kind of fucks him over, you feel bad, but then you get a glimpse at this character's face after they do it, and there is sadness within their eyes that you kind of get that there's a reason they're doing this, even if they act all malicious in the way they're doing it, to manipulate and being manipulative. You can tell that there's some underlying reason that they're doing this that must be important to them, otherwise they just wouldn't. And the one villain that isn't quite as, sympathetic is Sagara, who has just been introduced for me. And oh boy, I love her as well. I love that she's just sly. Well, she's a snake. She's of the Ananta clan. She is a snake. And her personality and the way she's acted so far very much fits that. And I'm all for it. I very much like her. She's also got a great design. But that isn't important, I swear. I really like her as a villain. She's starkly contrast to the others, at least so far. I'm sure we'll get her backstory and maybe my opinion on her will change, but so far I do quite like her. And then we have our main character, Kubera herself. Which is interesting. She's not all that special other than the fact she's got a fancy name and it's very, very strong. But she's a complete fucking idiot for the most part. And she's very emotionally strong, at least from the way she's been portrayed. Holding in and not letting out all of these horrible, and crying about everything she's experienced so far. She's got a lot of strength, both physically and mentally, even if she isn't all that intelligent. And so far we've seen her develop, at least a little bit. We've seen her slowly start to change and see the cracks start to form, her weaknesses start to show. And it's really interesting. It's really good. And the foreshadowing, oh my god! This webtoon's foreshadowing is insane. Obviously I don't know where any of it's going yet, but I can see, these plot threads and these seeds being laid as things go on, and oh my god, I'm so looking forward to getting further into this. I'm going to take my time with it, because it is very long and I don't want to lose the next week of my life just reading it. But that's all I've really got to say about Kubera so far. I will most likely make a video on it later on when I've read more of it. But with all that said, I've been Animosity, you've been you, and I hope to see you next time for another video. Ta-ta for now.